That was the first time I saw that. And I'll tell you, I was really worried. I mean, I've got tremendous trust in my staff, but when I heard Josiah was the guy that was going to be interviewing me, my faith declined. But I just want to say what a gift it is to be here. We just celebrated New Year's, and we were sitting around our kitchen counter on New Year's Day and having a conversation about New Year's resolution. And my New Year's resolution is to be a more grateful person. And I was doing some reading that says if we're grateful, our psychological health increases significantly. And so I think the first thing I want to say is I am so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that we have a God who loves us and is merciful towards us. And I want to give a little bit of a shout out to people who are here from Ohio. I was in Ohio a couple months ago, and one of the missionaries there, Jaslyn, where are you, Jaslyn? Cornered me. Can you picture that, those of you from Ohio? And she had this proposal that if Ohio were to bring 60 students, that I would crowd surf. And I figured that was a pretty safe bet. I was wrong. 68 students here from Ohio. And I want to be a man of my word, but I consulted both my theologian and my HR guy, and I can't. My HR guy says insurance won't cover it, and my theologian said if you make promises or vows in a rash moment, you're not obligated to fulfill those. So I'm sorry. Well, what a great start we had last night, huh? Mount Sinai. So proud of Jen. I've known her since that picture up on the board. Mount Sinai, God chose a man and called a man and sent that man to free his people by his power from oppression and slavery in Egypt and lead them to his holy mountain, to the place where he dwells, where he abides, so he could have relationship with them, his people. And I was thinking about that in terms of my own life. My youngest son just turned 18 years old in November. And I was 18 once, believe it or not. We were saying some prayers before we came out here, and Ryan was leading a prayer for Dan and I, and he was thanking the Lord for the many, many years of service that we've given to him. And I thought, we've just moved from many to many, many. But I was 18 once, and my son turning 18 gave me the occasion to think about when I was 18. And when I was 18 years old, I didn't look like this. It was the 70s. I graduated in 1976, bicentennial year. Our cap and gowns were red, white, and blue. Not really. But I had long blonde hair, kind of down to my shoulders. It was parted down the middle and feathered. Big old platform shoes that guys wore, bell-bottom pants, and these kind of silk psychedelic shirts. Do you get the picture? And that was normal. Just wonder what people are going to think about you when they look back on the way that. And when I was 18 years old, I just graduated from high school, and I was in a really bad place. My dad died when I was 15. I was the oldest of 7 children. My mom was 36, and she was left alone trying to raise 7 of us. And that sent me into a tailspin. When I was a senior in high school, I got into this really bad, intense relationship with this gal, and that broke up the day after graduation, and I was in a miserable place. I was depressed. I didn't know what the purpose of life was, the meaning of life was, and I was doing all kinds of things to try to ease the pain in my life. I was in bondage, and I was in slavery. And a friend of mine reached out to me. I wasn't going to church, so I had to be outside of church. and began to spend time with me. And in the context of that relationship, I don't know how it came up, but he started to talk about the Lord and his plan and his purpose for my life. And he brought me to a meeting like this, a smaller group, but it was young adults. It was 18 to 25-year-olds. And I walked into this room and experienced for the first time worship in the way that we worship. And it began up to take me down a path that's completely changed my life. And what I experienced in that worship was that God was real, that God was present, that you could actually have a relationship with God, and that he loved me, and he had a purpose and a plan for my life. And we live in the midst of a world where God's ignored. God isn't seen. We're filled with so much distractions that God never penetrates. But in that moment of worship and in the experience of the community that I experienced, the relationship that I experienced, God was made known to me in a way I hadn't experienced before. And that set me on a course that's changed. It's changed the whole of my life. God took me from slavery and brought me to his holy mountain and made himself known to me in the worship of God. You know, what happens when we worship? I mean, why is it that when we worship God, that we experience who experiences his presence and his power and his love? Why does that happen? And that happens because it's the right way. It's the way God designed things. God doesn't need our worship. Our worship adds nothing to the Lord. But this God who dwells in inaccessible light, who's all-powerful, omnipotent, who holds all things in existence, who created the universe and created the world and then created us in his likeness and image. This God wants to have a relationship with us. And that should blow our minds. I mean, if we think about that truthfully and seriously, we should not be able to comprehend that. And what happens when we worship God is that we actually, Jenna's comment last night, we become what we are. And what are we? We are creatures created in the likeness and image of God. We're meant to have a relationship with God. And the way we have a relationship with God is actually as creatures to this God. And when we worship him and extol him and acknowledge him and offer our lives to him, we come into the right place in the way that he made us. And the fruit of that is joy, and it's peace, and it's opening our lives to his mercy and to his love, and the freedom from slavery that he wants to give to us. And this is God's invitation to each of us in these days together. Let's come to his holy mountain. Let's go to the place where he abides, and let's offer him our lives and the honor and the praise and the glory that's due his name. And he will meet us and begin to lead us into that perfect plan and place that he has for us, that we might be people like Moses, who God calls and then sends to lead his people out of bondage and slavery to become part of the people of God. May God continue to be with us. May he continue to dwell amongst us. And I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your yes to the Lord and what that does for my own faith, and what a gift of hope you bring to the church and the world. And so God bless you, and God bless the rest of this conference.